You ever have that feeling, you know the one, where it feels like you've just outgrown your own life? Where the container that's holding your dreams, your potential, your purpose, it just feels like it's about to crack under the pressure. Well, today we're going to dive into a powerful idea that speaks right to that feeling. An idea that says maybe that cracking isn't an end, but a beginning. I mean, listen to that. That one sentence just perfectly captures that moment of transition, doesn't it? It's that feeling when you know deep down that your current situation, your job, your role, your season of life, it just can't hold what's glowing inside you anymore. It's a call to something more, something bigger. So let's start right there with that very personal, sometimes pretty uncomfortable feeling of being too small. Because as it turns out, that feeling is actually the launch pad for understanding a much, much deeper spiritual truth about who we are and what we were made for. But to really get what it means to step into a bigger pot, we've got to ask the question, where does this whole metaphor even come from? What you'll find is that this isn't some new age idea or a modern self-help concept. No, this is an ancient, earthy metaphor that's woven right into the fabric of Scripture. You see, this whole concept of us being a vessel, a pot, a jar, a container made of clay, it's one of the most persistent metaphors in the entire Bible. It shows up from the very first book all the way to the letters in the New Testament. And while its meaning kind of evolves, it always points back to this one fundamental relationship and to our own fragile yet incredibly purposeful nature. And this is where it gets really interesting. The original languages actually give us clues. The Hebrew word keli is pretty general. It can mean any kind of container or instrument. But then you have a word like Harris, which specifically means earthenware, pottery, something made of clay, and the subtext there is always fragility. Then, in the New Testament, the Greek word skeos is often used explicitly to talk about human beings as vessels. The language itself is telling a story. We are containers, designed to hold something. And that leads us right to the heart of the whole thing, because before a pot can hold anything, it has to be made. The story of the vessel is first and foremost the story of its maker. So let's really explore this core image, God as the potter and us, humanity, as the clay. And this isn't just some nice poetic picture. It's a foundational statement about who's in charge, what our purpose is, and even about mercy. I mean, right from the very beginning, in Genesis, where humanity is formed from the dust of the ground, there it is, in its most basic form. The idea is that God is the one with his hands in the clay, intentionally shaping and forming us. And then the prophets, guys like Isaiah and Jeremiah, they pick up this powerful image to explain God's relationship with the entire nation. And the story of Jeremiah visiting the potter's house is maybe the clearest picture of this you'll ever find. He watches a potter working on a pot, and it gets messed up. It's marred in his hand. It's ruined. But what does the potter do? Does he toss the clay? Nope. He just squishes it down and reworks it into something new. The message here is just staggering. It means that even when we are marred, when we are broken, the Maker has both the power and the mercy to reshape us for his purpose. Okay, so we're the clay, and we're shaped by a divine potter. Got it. But once we're formed, what are we for? What is a vessel actually supposed to do? Well, the Bible gives us two really, really different answers to that question. As the story of Scripture builds, we start to see this simple clay pot come to symbolize two totally opposite ends of the spectrum. On one hand, you have miraculous, life-giving provision, and on the other, you have sudden, irreversible judgment. And this is where the metaphor just gets so powerful. On one side, you have these incredible stories, like the widow whose tiny little jar of oil just keeps pouring and pouring, filling every empty vessel she can find. It's a symbol of God's absolutely limitless abundance. But then, on the flip side, you have the prophet Jeremiah buying an earthenware pot and smashing it to pieces in front of the city elders, a visceral, unforgettable symbol of a coming destruction that cannot be undone. Same object, two totally different meanings. And just so you know, this is not a minor theme we're talking about. The most common Hebrew word for vessel, keli, shows up over 325 times in the Old Testament alone. It's used for everything from the sacred instruments in the temple to the simple cooking pots in a home. It just goes to show how central this idea of being a container for a divine purpose really is. And right when you think you've got it all figured out, the potter, the clay, the two different purposes of the pot, the story takes this radical turn. It suggests that maybe, just maybe, We've been focusing on the wrong thing all along. The vessel, as important as it is not the point. And that brings us to the absolute climax of this whole biblical idea. It's a concept from the Apostle Paul that completely reframes everything we've just talked about. This is where it all comes together in the New Covenant. And there it is, the great revelation. We are fragile, common, easily broken jars of clay, on purpose. Our weakness isn't a bug in the system, it's a feature. It's designed to put all the focus squarely on the incredible, priceless treasure that we've been chosen to carry inside. So the crucial point is this: our value isn't in our own strength, or our own perfection, or our own durability. Not at all. The value is determined by what fills us. Our fragility, our cracks, that feeling of being too small, that becomes the very backdrop that shows off an all-surpassing power, a power that is so obviously from God and not from us. So you see the whole journey, right? It starts with us as clay, being shaped by God. Then those vessels are used to hold the promises and rituals of the covenant. They even become symbols of national destiny and judgment. But then there's a pivot. The story stops being about the pot and starts being all about what's inside the pot. And it culminates with us, fragile jars of clay, becoming containers for God's very own glory. And that brings us right back around to where we started, that feeling that the pot is too small. Knowing this whole story, maybe that feeling isn't a sign of your failure. Maybe it's an invitation to step out in faith, not into a stronger pot, but simply a bigger one with a greater capacity to be filled with a treasure that isn't your own. So the question isn't just about stepping into a bigger pot. The real question is, what will you allow your vessel to hold,